Hey everybody. This one's kind of another check-in. I think I'm gonna make a whole different spin-off, honestly. Um, I just want to go in a little more to the video I did the other day. It helped. I'm working through quite a bit. Again, I talked the other day about where I say it's my empathy, but that's not actually my empathy. That's part of my detection, my awareness system. But that came from not feeling safe when I was younger and constantly, being on the look for cues. And again, it sucks how that intuitiveness comes about, but I wouldn't change it because that's one of my, favorite things about myself is that I can walk into a room and, it's not like a psychic ability. I can't read minds, but I can tell when something's up. That's what happened, that day of the breakup is, when she pushed me too far, something inside my subconscious knew, like it recognized the pattern, and it said, hey, if you go along with this, it will break you. And it immediately activated that sense that something was being shady. And when I asked for clarification and didn't get it, that was when it told me, something is dodgy here. It might not be exactly what you're thinking, because again, I didn't think infidelity until that moment. Like, why are you being so shady and not talking to me about this? That's, and again, I will openly admit that might be, going there. It is past trauma. I know it is. But that doesn't mean there's not something there. And the more I reflect on it, she genuinely wanted me to give my blessing. And again, even if it wasn't to intentionally physically cheat, she wanted my blessing to step out of the relationship, in any capacity. And that's, if you got a question, if I'm the one, I ain't the one. And I can accept that. And she made a choice that she wanted to, rather than have any kind of faith in me, take the step and find out. Well, there's a reason the saying is FAFO. Like, that's the cover-up I'm going to get on this tattoo that we got together. It's hard to show off. I'm getting the letters FAFO, and I'm not covering up anything else, because that's going to be my reminder. I've been sleeping on myself for the last 4 years. I've been letting myself, I literally begged her for some kind of validation, some kind of, help me. I don't expect you to build me, but be my cheerleader so I can build myself. And I never got that. Every time I would try and improve, or there were signs of improvement, again, here came this attitude of, oh, well, that's not going to work. Or, oh, why don't you focus on this instead? Or, oh, why don't, that's not going to get you anywhere. You need to do this. Well, guess what? I operate different than other people because I am different than other people. There, again, I've said it before, there is no one size fits all, solution that works for everybody. And I am very different. And I understand, because again, I got comfortable in that place of, wallowing misery. Like I was in there for so long, I was comfortable with it. And, I'm glad I got out of there, because again, it was that moment, that snap that said, hey, you are not, if you play along, you will not survive this. That's what, she wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it, but that was like a full on. Basically, somebody did my own trick to me. I have this thing. It's hard to explain. When I step into a room and there's people around, not only can I sense what's going on with them, but something in me projects outwards. Usually, when I meet someone for the first time, it's one of two reactions. Either they automatically, sense my warmth, um, that caring heart I have, this emotional intelligence to kind of give people some grace. They'll see that and they'll fall in love with it, and it's great. They'll open up. I'm one of those people that when I'm out in public shopping, a complete stranger will walk up and tell me their life story, and it's cool. Like I am honored by that. You know, that's a really precious gift to be able to be so loving that a perfect stranger feels comfortable to come up and just vent to you and feel heard and seen. Like, that is an amazing gift. I love that about myself. But the other part of me is, again, along with this emotional intelligence and now this experience I've been through, my discernment is it didn't have a choice. It had to, build quickly. It had to get me out of that situation. Because there was no other way. It was either that or I was, going to end up being destroyed. And again, one thing that it took me, I'm hard-headed, it took me a while for it to sink in, but, again, 4 years is a long time to every day just feel like giving up and to not do it. And, now that I've broken free of this cycle, this, the highs and lows, the breadcrumbing, I used to think in my journey, I like to study a lot about, psychology and why people do the things they do. I study philosophy, different viewpoints on the world. One thing I don't care much for, and it'll probably be a surprise because of the way I talk. The reason I talk the way I talk is so I'm understood. I'm real good at, well, no, that's a lie. In certain situations, I'm good at translating the way that I think or see things into a way that most other people can understand things. Because again, if you want true change, you cannot change something until you understand it. That is a big part of my pride. That's why I say you have to do the work. You have to go inwards, Going back to, the other part of me is people can sense something about me. Not just that level of love, but that level of what I will tolerate in my presence. And a lot of people, it freaks them out. They don't like that. A lot of people confuse my acceptance with arrogance. Let me tell you, the last 4 years, I had absolutely zero self-esteem. There was no arrogance to it, and I still believed it. So that kind of tells me, that's my indicator. Hey, that's a true thought. That's founded in fact, not, because that's a problem I have is I go to a lot of places trying to find this information, and sometimes I let the information soak in and it kind of leads me the wrong direction. And then I have to go back and fix that before I can go forward and fix what I initially was after. That's something I know about myself. Again, that same thing that gives me that intuitiveness to understand what's going on around me. I also, in my younger years, became, I call it a chameleon. I can match and fit in with other people, even though that's not me. Like, I was very good at masking. That was one of the things that let me develop that mask. I don't need that anymore. I am very content with who I am. Right now, I got some things to work on. Again, now they understand the damage that was done to my thought process, my nervous system, from the abuse I've been taking the last few years in the state I was in made it even worse. And again, that kind of came to me, that clarity. That was on purpose. When I was begging, be there for me, and that's when she would slip away. That when I showed signs of improvement, there would be those little jabs that you're not good enough, or you're not doing the right thing. That was on purpose to keep me in that low self-esteem, that low energy state, so I would continue to tolerate it. So I would always be there. So, she could do whatever she want, and I God forbid I had the audacity to raise my voice and say I don't like it. But again, it got walked all over, and then I forgave it, and then it happened again. The cycle kept repeating. It was never going to change. As much as I, wished for it, as much as I expressed it, as much as I, tried to show her the change. I mean, that's something else I've come to realize. She got to witness almost in real time. If she hadn't backed off of me the way she did, she would have got to see all of it in real time. This change that took place in me, because it wasn't instant. It felt instant because of the relief in the moment once I broke free, but it wasn't. This was a gradual process that's been happening over the years. Again, people that don't know me can say I'm talking out of my ass, but again, my intuitiveness is really on point. Again, not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm dead on and I know all your secrets just by a few minute conversation. That's not how it works. But the minute you are dishonest with me, my brain automatically picks up dishonesty as maliciousness, and as soon as I sense maliciousness, nope, I'm not interested. If it doesn't evolve me, it doesn't involve me. And one of the problems I've been having lately is doom scrolling. It's a great distraction, It's one of those self-sabotaging things that I was programmed to do. Instead of working on what I was supposed to be working on, I'd sit here and watch videos. I've been sharing a bunch on Facebook. My feed is flooded with it because I feel like I have to express something, and these videos help me do that. Not these, the ones I'm recording, I mean the ones that I share. But again, that lays the trap for if I go down the wrong path, it kind of steers me, and I have to correct that. So I'm going to try and take a few days of a break. I'm not going to ignore my social media, because again, if I do that, they win. Then that means I stop doing this, and I refuse. Flat out. Even if I can't do it the way I'm doing it now, if something comes up, I will find a way. Because this means that much to me. I am very passionate. The things I went through, I came through the other end, and I'm marked up. I got a lot of scars, but I'm still whole. I'm still, I didn't get cold. I didn't get callous. I didn't become, like most other people in this situation. I didn't let it harden my heart. And that is, the world needs more of that. The world, needs more people to just work through their pain so that they can show off, the real beautiful side of them, instead of this program side from the society we've been forced to live in. That, and again, that's one of those things that I used to talk to her about all the time, and I was always met with unsurety and doubt, and it's funny because I've been made to live in fear, like, so much, and I hate it. That's one of those biblical principles I understand. It says, don't doubt, don't be afraid. That's because that stems from not trusting in God. It's not trusting God's plan. That's where all that comes from. And I do have that trust. They talk about that faith the size of a mustard seed. It packs a punch. I watched this really cool video earlier today, and it really put things in perspective for me. A lot of these other videos, they kind of pointed me in the right direction, but had my attention in the wrong place. I talk about, these abilities and these superpower, the empathy, the intuitiveness, the discernment, and it's real. I mean, that is, if you look deep enough, genuine psychologists have studied, like, this is real stuff, and it is enhanced when you focus it. And in my case, when I focus on God, that is the focus that activates me to be at my best. And then I get caught in this trap where I want to be distracted from what I'm thinking about, and I don't put my focus there where I should, and I get avoidant. And then I get in that same cycle where I was trained, even if the person isn't there to say a discouraging word, I got to beat myself up. Like, this is how dastardly and devious, I am not kidding. Again, going back to about pop psychology, and I said this the other day and I'll say it again, I really don't like the fact that most people, when they have a breakup, they say, oh, my ex was a narcissist. Because in most cases, here's something that a lot of people don't realize, right? The majority of society, because of the system we live in, have narcissistic tendencies. Even some of the nicest, kindest people, even I am still trying to purge myself. And I've been doing this for a while, and I still catch things that I missed. To get rid of that, to try and clean myself of that. We are forced to live a certain way and to think and act a certain way to survive, and that's what causes this. I know a lot of people. Again, you're going to get a lot of repetition in this one. That's because I am who I say I am. It's not me so much convincing myself, it's me reminding myself, because I keep having these things in my head that want to go back to where I was a heap on the floor and not doing anything about it, and I absolutely refuse to go back to that. I'm very serious when I make my posts and say I would rather be alone for the rest of my life than be around company that turns me back into that. But again, that acceptance is, I know that's not the reality. There are still good people out there. Again, I'm looking for good people. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be willing to want to be better. And I found my tribe. I know it exists. It felt really good yesterday. To know that, people genuinely like to hear what I have to say. Like, some people do take me seriously. I'm not used to that. I've had people come over and they are aware of some of my gifts and abilities that I've honed, and they want me to use them to help them do stuff, but they don't want to fully listen. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to get to where I am so they can do it for themselves. And that's the thing, that I can't do it for anybody. All I can do is be a friend, help you through it, and share with you how I got through it. So hopefully you can do what I did and find whatever is up here that lets you relate to that, so you understand, so you can take the next step. That is all that I am capable of doing. That's why I say all the time, it's not a savior complex. I can't save anybody. We have a savior. It's Jesus. You got to turn to Jesus and let him do the work in you. But it's not a wave of a wand. You have to seek it. You have to want it. You have to take the steps yourself before God can heal you. You have to prove to God that you want it. Like God don't accept fake, and God can sense a fake. That was, that's kind of when the Spirit overtakes you and activates, and you are your best self. That's kind of what instilled that in me is going through that process and understanding that about my relationship with God, is that's how it worked. Again, God doesn't actually demand perfection of you. He demands that you're willing to seek it, that you have faith that eventually you can become perfect, if you accept the guidance, if you accept the gifts, if you use them productively, if you step into your purpose, which is what I'm doing now. And I know that's true. I know people are looking at me like I'm a little crazy right now because of some of the things, some of the shit I'm coming out with. And that's cool. Like, look, again, I have God's approval. I don't need yours. I need to be very clear about that, because that is really where I'm at in life. I want to have connections with people. I, have a lot of love to give, and I want to do that. I want to share that with the world still after everything I've been through. But I finally learned the lesson that I can't just give it blindly to everybody and sacrifice myself in the process. I can't do that because it's counterproductive. I really do have a type, of people that I was letting in my life. One of the really cool revelations that I had in this whole thing with my ex, at least 2 of the people on her roster, on her backup for supply, are my discards. And that's confirmed. I know this. It's not speculation. And that made me laugh out loud when I had that realization. Like, you're really, these are people that I had been around, and I got to see them without the mask off, and I don't want you around me because I know who you really are. And that's the people that she wanted to run to run away from me. I'm really not trying to be like mean about it, but I'm sorry, that is pathetic and hilarious. And it helps, because I have that self-awareness. I know that I am a high caliber individual. I know a lot of people don't look at me that way because, again, where I've been broken, but I'm intentional. I'm not for that quick fix like everybody else. I knew that when I came out the other end of what I was going through, that I want to hit the ground running. I didn't want to come out half-assed and stumble and go back to where I was. I'm done with that. I've learned that lesson. I can move on. So that's what I'm going to do. I know it was like a programmed addiction. That's why I miss things so much. Like, I'm aware of that. That's why this little trick that I do doesn't work on anything that's an addiction. Because it is a genuine addiction. You need to discipline yourself. I keep having these that is the right word. I keep having these fantasies of, because that's what I'm used to, the back and forth, the highs and lows. So I know she's probably going to come back at some point because that's what people like that do. You know, although then again, maybe not, because I'm being very public and very open, and she'll probably want to test the waters and make sure like that I'm not just sitting here putting on an act for people, because a lot of people think that about me. I know that's one of the things that people think. You can't be real because people aren't the way you are. I haven't met anyone like you, so I don't trust that, and that's cool. Like if that's the way you want to think, that's hey, nothing I can do about it. You know. And when going back, these fantasies and part of me knows, there's a part that knows that I am fully discarded because I saw underneath the mask. The tables flipped. As soon as I saw under the mask, it was no longer she was a danger to me. Now I'm a danger to her because I can call her out on it. And that is something that they hate. And I have seen that because I can't tell you how many, the other day when I told the whole story of everything we've been through, how many times that I would say, hey, it's not holding a grudge, but this is something that still stands out in my mind. And it was always, oh, you got to let that go. But then again, the same person could come to me and bring up shit from the past. Like, this is what I was living with for the last few years. This is what I chose. That's the accountability. I chose this as my person. This is what I kept turning to try and get help, for what I was going through. No wonder it was as rough as it was. And now that I can see, I really do not give myself enough credit for just how strong I am. But now that I know that, a lot of people, going back to that being controlled by fear, a lot of people let themselves get held back by that fear because that lack of trust in the plan and what's going on. And I don't have that because I've seen myself fail and rise again time and time again. So who cares? Seriously, who cares? If I fail, it's another lesson, and when I get back up, I won't make it again. That's how this process works. And I'm done being small. I'm done shrinking. That's not what I'm meant for, Anyone who knows me knows that. Whether you like it or you hate it, I'm not kidding when I say I'm here to change the world. I'm going to do it. I'm tired of seeing people hurting. I'm tired of seeing suffering needlessly. It's all manufactured just so certain people can still have a certain level of power. I'm over it. I don't want anybody else to go through what I've gone through. And I know that's unrealistic because it's a cycle, but that doesn't mean that I can't stop doing my part. I can show up. I can get the understanding. I can teach people to do what I've done to myself, to get in better places. And again, the way it works is there will be other people that take it and do it better than I did it. They'll teach me things that'll help me get shortcuts to get even better. Like, again, that's community. That's the process. That's why we're supposed to work together. I understand all these things. And that all comes from this clarity of taking the time to go inwards. I got sidetracked, but earlier I was talking about how my friends, used to come around me and they used to want to activate me and use my ability to help them out of a jam. And I know, because sometimes I go back and I watch my videos and I don't even realize I'm doing it. But sometimes I'll get this look like where I trail off. That's me going inward. And when I go inward, the way that my actual empathy works is, I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I have that thing where I like to relate to people, where somebody tells me a story and I tell a story to relate. That's how I work. So when a friend comes to me, talking about their problems, I go inwards and I find the problem that I've experienced in the past that lets me relate to what I'm picking up from them. Not just in their words, but in their actions. Again, that chameleon ability, I really need to get better discipline on that, because that is something that I made automatic as a survival tactic, and it can't be automatic. I have to be aware that I'm doing it, because that's my problem in the past, is I would do this mimic chameleon thing, and I wouldn't be aware of it, and I would let what is someone else is going through come out through me. Like, I can distinctively remember several times that a friend has come to me for advice, and then they get upset at me because it seems like I'm angry. And I am angry, but I'm not angry with them. I'm angry for them, because I can see what they are hiding, what they're not being open about. That part that they are not expressing because of what they're going through, I can express it for them. And again, people can think I'm nuts, but I understand how I work. I took the time. I asked the questions, and I continue to do it. And again, that's why I need to take a little break, because all this doom scrolling and stuff it's distracting me from what I need to be doing right now. To get further, because that's the goal. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until I can't go no more. I'm going to keep improving myself. I'm going to keep finding ways to use myself to make the world a better place, to let God actively work through me constantly, or as constant as possible. We do have to be realistic with our expectations, but no, I correct myself. No, we don't. Because with God, nothing is impossible. I mean, look at me. Look at where I was, that broken shell, and then look at me now. The confidence that I feel now, nothing's impossible. You just got to surrender. And I know this is way over, but I think I'll leave it on that note. I think that's a good place to leave it. So I will see you guys in the next one. I don't know, if I'm going to keep working on the other series. I'll probably be flip-flopping between working on breaking free inside your head and dealing with this, recovering from something like this. So I'll be flip-flopping back and forth. So, yeah, that's what's going on. Remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other. See you in the next one.